Hi, my name is Cheryl Kearney. I found this journal when I was cleaning a few weeks ago. I think it was on Mother's Day. Today's date is May 18th, 2011. But this journal that I'm going to read to you was written the day I got a diagnosis, Friday, July 22nd, 2005, at the age of 47. The day started like most other summer days, but this day was somehow different. I could feel it. I was not looking forward to going to the neurologist office in the afternoon. That was the day that I was going to find out the results of all the tests that I had taken. After my first visit to the neurologist just 6 weeks ago, he said that he couldn't rule out anything yet. He told me that he was trying to especially rule out very early onset Alzheimer's. My husband and I had become strangers, but I still felt the need to have him with me to hear the results. Did I somehow know that the news was not going to be good? After all, I'd been having strange symptoms for a while. I might have shared it with my husband if we had been getting along, but then again, I'm not so sure. I think that I was afraid to share this with him because I was afraid of him making me feel stupid. I guess I've probably been having symptoms for about 6 months. Well, that's what I said when I journaled, but I think I can trace the symptoms back to 1999, the fall of 1999. I can remember a minor league hockey game that I went to with my youngest son. I think that it was in the beginning of 2005. We didn't sit in the usual section that we had in the past, but rather our seats were closer to the ice. This night seemed like most other games we'd gone to. But when my son left the seats to get something to eat, I found myself looking around as if I'd never been there before. I thought that it was pretty strange, but I told no one. I just figured everything looked so different because of the location of our seats. I'd also been feeling very strange when I went food shopping alone lately. It was as if it took me at least twice as long to finish the shopping. I struggled to find the items that I should have been able to find very easily, since I'd been shopping at this store for many, many years. I also had a problem staying on task, and I figured I was just depressed. My husband went to the neurologist with me. I somehow felt protected with him there. I guess that I wanted my husband there so that he could understand what I've been going through lately. I've been constantly forgetting things, and my husband and children would get angry at me. This I remember. It was a constant struggle to remember things, which made it very frustrating for me. I was even forgetting how to spell some words, and I found myself using the dictionary at work. When my husband and I first entered the examining room, we sat down and we waited a few minutes for the doctor to come in. When he entered the room, I introduced him to my husband. The doctor then asked me how I was feeling and if there were any changes in my symptoms. I told him that I felt the same as before. I guess I was nervous because I jokingly told the doctor I hoped that I passed all my tests. He looked too serious, and I was afraid of what I was going to hear. The doctor said that he'd go over the test results with me. He then did a few quick tests with me. I guess they were mini mental tests. He asked me to demonstrate these things. I had to pretend that I had items in my hand, use a comb to comb my hair, hold a nail with one hand and a hammer in the other, bang the nail. I had to draw the numbers on a circle to make a clock. Then he had me draw hands to show the time 10:50. And I think he also had me start with the number 100 and then count backwards, subtract 7. And math's never been my strong thing, so that was difficult for me, and it probably would have been without a memory impairment. So I somehow felt a little confused doing these things. while I was doing these things, and I wasn't sure why. Afterward, he told me that I had done all the tests well, but on my first appointment with him, I had failed most of them. He also had a physician's assistant with him in the room and asked me if it was okay if he stayed. I said yes. On this day, my worst fears were confirmed. He put the x-ray from my PET scan on the light box. He proceeded to tell us that what we were looking for were parts of the brain that use sugar. He then explained and showed where the sugar on the PET scan should have been and where it wasn't. He said that there was some damage to parts of my brain. He said that the only diagnosis that he could give me was EOAD, or early onset Alzheimer's. I felt like I had gotten hit with a brick. I was in shock to hear it. But there were the words. They had been said. I was speechless. I was motionless. But my husband, who was always a skeptic, had some questions right away. He said that he needed to be honest with my doctor and that he needed to be honest with him and that we were having marriage problems. My husband suggested that maybe it was depression or attention span that was causing my memory problems. My doctor said that he didn't feel that it was either of those things. He said that he had a hard time making this diagnosis because of my age. I was only 47 years old. He did strongly encourage me to seek a second opinion in Boston, Mass. He wrote down Mass General Hospital and what type of doctor that I needed to see, which was another neurologist. He said that he hoped that he was wrong. He then said that he wanted to see me in 2 to 3 months. He gave me a script for Aricept to help with my memory. After the appointment, we thankfully had some errands to run. Otherwise, I probably would have fallen apart. I didn't know if I was ready for the journey that I just was told that I was on. I thought I was doing okay emotionally even when we got home. I told my 2 sons about the diagnosis. My daughter was not home. My children were 23, 19, and 15 years old. My daughter was the oldest. Even though my children knew that I was having difficulty, they felt that a new doctor would not agree with the first diagnosis. But I was not so optimistic. First, I called my mother. She was not home, so I just left her a message to call me back when she got home. I then needed to call my 2 very closest friends. They all knew about the appointment and were waiting for me to call them with the results. I called my friend Jean, and at first we just chatted. Then I told her the results of my visit, and she was in shock. We talked for a while, and she said that she would pray for me. I think that we actually prayed together on the phone. Then I called my friend Elaine, and I got about the same reaction. Before the diagnosis, I had dismissed any of my symptoms, thinking that they could be caused by other things such as menopause, depression, or stress. Later on that night, my 70-year-old mother called. It was extremely difficult for me to tell her about my diagnosis. I still think that this is one of the hardest phone calls that I have had to make in my life. When I told my mom, she just couldn't believe it, and she was so incredibly sad. I could just hear it in her voice. We both cried for what seemed like forever. I told my mom that I needed to believe this first diagnosis unless I hear otherwise from another doctor. I told her that I needed to believe. I was afraid of being hopeful and then being devastated all over again. I'm feeling like I've somehow let my family down, although I know it wasn't my fault. I still needed some time alone, so I watched television by myself. Later, I used my computer to research Alzheimer's disease. That turned out to be a very bad mistake. Then I realized when I was reading the information and symptoms on the screen that I probably wasn't going to get a different diagnosis. It was extremely difficult to clear my head so I could get some sleep, so I watched TV until 12:30 a.m. I had an extremely difficult night. I kept thinking about the doctor's appointment and the diagnosis and crying uncontrollably, trying desperately to get some sleep. I think that I only slept about 1 to 2 hours all night. I regretted doing the research on the computer. I need to try to stay positive and strong for my kids. When I was researching Alzheimer's, I read that most patients died within 8 years of being diagnosed, but that some died within 3 years and some lived up to 20. If I definitely have this terrible, debilitating disease, I hoped and prayed that it would progress very slowly. I hoped that I would live to see all of my children become happy, successful adults. I worried about never seeing my future grandchildren, and that upset me terribly. Now I'm done reading from the journal, and I will try to catch you up on my story as it is now. So this was in July of 2005. And since it is 2011, it has been almost 6 years since the diagnosis. I think about 6 or 8 weeks after that diagnosis, I did see another neurologist, and he gave me a diagnosis of MCI, or mild cognitive impairment, which means I don't have dementia, but that my brain doesn't function normally for my age. Right now I am 53. I had to discontinue Aricept because I had severe leg cramps. I am currently taking galantamine, which is a generic of Razodine. And I guess I've been on that medicine since either 2005 or 2006, so for quite a while. And I guess I'm doing pretty well. For a while after I got the second diagnosis, I continued research online and just drove myself crazy to try to figure out which diagnosis I was dealing with. I just wanted to know. Where I am today is I don't so much drive myself crazy with the diagnosis. I think about how well I am doing, how I am functioning, rather than what the word is. So I don't really know. Is it EAOD or is it MCI? Whatever. I'm dealing with something that I know. So I'm doing okay. I live alone, work about 52 and a half hours a week. I have to work 2 jobs to support myself, and it is very difficult. I try to keep a positive attitude, and before Rick Phelps from Ohio started this group on Facebook called Memory People, I didn't have anyone. I had no support group. I really didn't have anybody who I could talk to when I was having some difficulty about my symptoms that could relate to it, that could say, oh yeah, that happens to me. So Rick, thanks again. I can't thank you enough. You have helped me tremendously, and the fact that I can help other people helps me. So thank you again, Rick. And as difficult as it is to do this video, if it helps one person, two people, whoever it's going to help. As long as it helps somebody, then it was worth it. I guess I just want to tell you the symptoms that I had before going to my primary care were word retrieval. I could get stuck in the middle of a sentence. I would repeat things. I would forget things constantly. I would get lost. Just quite a lot of things were happening. But I am doing better right now, and I have been for a while. I do have to keep an eye on things, make sure I don't get too stressed out by things, have too much going at once, or work too many hours. And I just have to keep a handle on those things so I can function the best way I can. Thanks again for watching my video. Have a wonderful day.